So thank you all for joining tonight. And we've got a session where Helena's going to take us through her thoughts on the future of advice and how we're going to go about doing that, because she's very passionate about this. And I met Helena, I don't know if you remember Helena, but I met Helena at a Boring Money event with Holly, and she was like a breath of fresh air. So with that lovely intro, Helena, I'm going to pass over to you to talk us through the next, 15-20 minutes, and then we'll open it up to the panel, and then we normally go very off-piste after that. That's normally what happens. So there we go. I will try and keep it, kind of thing, and I will man the chat so that I kind of at least share that bit and get it back in play.
Yeah, I do remember that quite well. Don't know if you remember me limping because I decided it was a good idea to help my friend's 5-year-old learn how to do a wheelbarrow race. Yeah, you don't do that if you're over 30.
I don't think you told me that. You're way too professional. I don't remember that.
Yeah, I did. I was limping so badly I couldn't walk. I really just wanted to start by saying that I've absolutely loved these sessions. I've listened to so many inspiring, incredible people speak, and I just feel like you guys are all giving up your evening tonight to listen to me, which is really, really, really amazing, and I feel very honored. And I just want to let you know that the best thing for me would be if you take something away from tonight. So I'm going to try my absolute best to do that. But I just want to let you know something, to be honest. Blue in the face, please remind me to breathe. Just for tonight. So I want to start by just sharing a very quick video, and to me this is something that represents quite a lot about what I'm going to talk about tonight. So just 1 second, if I share my screen. Can you all see that? Goes and repeat. I'll just stop that. So I want to talk about the advice gap tonight. Actually, fittingly, Boring Money Advice did their research report today as well. And I just want to share some ideas for advisors to, I said originally evolve, but I feel like I want to say get involved. And this video to me is one of my most favorite videos that I've seen for a long time around money. It, to me, reflects beautifully that money is a force in our lives and how important it is for us to think about it and link it to what matters to you. Because money skills are survival skills. It's a driver of behavior and emotions which impact on a lot of decisions we make and also a lot of opportunities that we take. It's also one of the main causes of stress. It generates fear, anxiety, regret, shame, guilt, huge range of other negative emotions that we just don't try to understand. It also makes us feel successful, valued, and important. It helps us contribute to society, and it helps us to give to other people. It gives us choices. To me, it's an exceptional tool in our lives. After all, we've created it and we gave it meaning. But we seem to have a widening gap of the help available to people. I was really sad to hear today that it's 12.7 million people now that they estimate. That's how big the advice gap is. It is coming across as a luxury that's reserved for people with lots of money. And I just feel that financial planning can make such a meaningful connection and difference to people, especially when they're younger, and we're leaving all of that to robo-advisors to help them. And it's such a tick box exercise. Financial planning offers more than financial advice, and it doesn't equal products. It's a learning experience that brings your money to life and lets you get to grips with it. To me, it's about intelligently connecting money to what matters to people, providing them with clear information to help them make informed decisions around what they value. It reassures and empowers people. It gives them confidence, choice, and opportunity. I don't think we can possibly offer someone personalized financial advice without first understanding how they view things like risk, spending, savings, and all the emotions that goes around money decisions. This is why we need to remember the humanity in what we do and what we offer. We are dealing with individuals on deeply complex and intricate subjects. We really, really underestimate this. Breathe. We are way behind on the curve for adopting to innovation because we really seem to suffer from a lack of imagination in what we offer clients. And for me, this is a big issue. The challenge is not that people are taking advice elsewhere, it's that they're not engaging with it at all. We're only serving 10% of the UK. Why? For something that I really believe is fundamentally essential and that people need, we are struggling to get people to see that they need us. If we want to get more people to get access to advice and get money help, we need to let them see that it's worth their time and effort to give their money matters attention and that they need to do this now, not later. Most people access advice at retirement. They can make much more meaningful changes if they manage their money better now when they're younger. So to me, what is holding us back? There's four main things: complacency and lack of competition, not starting with the client, regulation, and we need to get more creative. So complacency and lack of competition is just about the lack of incentive for the industry to change, and there's really not much challenge. To me, it's coming across as, why do we need to change? It gives a real sense of inertia, and for most advisors, it's not that difficult to build up to capacity very easily. Even the switch from commission to fees lacked imagination. Many advisors base their charging structure on what they earned before as commission. And I know I'm being deliberately antagonistic here to make a point, but the fact that most advisors still charge in the same way reflects this. We lack competition. So as an example, I found it very interesting that advisors were relatively relaxed about Vanguard's advice proposition. They only launched a few weeks ago, and I already spotted a reader question on boring money advice, asking whether they should switch to Vanguard instead of their advisor, as it seemed less expensive. We shouldn't ignore and knock lower cost services, and we really shouldn't feel unafraid of it. We can't remain as comfortable as we are because it just looks arrogant. So how will we develop innovative advice models to serve more people if we solely leave the advice gap to tech people to solve? We need to have an input as advisors to create a more affordable advice solution. So the second thing for me is that we're not starting with the client. We build our advice service propositions on what we think people value. Are we really checking well enough with clients what they appreciate? An interesting bit of research by Morningstar reflected this, and what clients value and what advisors value was really out by a mile. This lack of clarity means there's a disconnect, and we are struggling to articulate clearly what our value propositions are. We offer elements of our service that's really not that meaningful to clients, and everything we have seems to be very similar. Do we actually check what clients want and consider creating our service offerings based on this? I know it sounds basic, but it's a step that many firms miss. We need to attract more younger clients, and currently we are massively underserving them because we're not offering them anything that's interesting to them. It all feels similar, and it's not going to be the way that they want to engage with us. I know regulation is limiting some of this, but we have to actually take some time to think about it. To serve the advice gap, we need to flip the traditional advice model on its head and start from scratch. If more businesses did this, we would create more competition, which is not only healthy, but desperately needed. I also think as advisors, we need to take pride in what we do and what we do well. We should never ever underestimate the value of making someone think. The world to me seems to be set on everything being fast and quick. Thinking about money is hugely important. Most people avoid it. We need to help people by asking good questions in a meaningful way, and that won't be some quick tick box exercise. So the third one, I know most people will bring this one up. We need some flexibility in regulation to help. To me, regulation is stifling innovation and it desperately needs to be more agile. The regulator needs to walk a day in advisor and client's shoes. Some of the regulatory requirements are out of date and meaningless to clients, particularly since pension freedom and auto enrollment. Disclosure and transparency is absolutely important, but it doesn't need to be this complex. We can make such advancements in how advice is presented if these elements were adapted and we as advisors or the industry had more of a say in how we present information to clients. We need to create a more autonomous environment where firms are trusted to deliver advice compliantly and give clients the relevant information to help them make well-informed decisions. We need to set example practices, not rules. And we need to encourage research-based decisions and create a learning culture. It keeps it more open to changes that are likely to happen, because let's face it, it does, and takes away from that rigid set of rules that can be misinterpreted. To me, a better approach would be to make treating customers fairly the purpose of regulation and let companies set the service standards to deliver this. This leaves the regulator to focus more on stopping scams and fraud, and that's where they'll make a bigger difference to clients. Having a more flexible approach would allow businesses to innovate more in service proposition and let us not cling on to this belief that this is the way it's supposed to be done. It kills creativity. Which leads me nicely to the next point. 4, we need to get creative. That's not a word you hear in finance often, but the way we speak to clients and communicate is out of date, rigid, and formal. It comes across as complex and hard to follow, and the clients are not incapable of understanding. We're not communicating it well. And as an industry, we need to take responsibility for this. We have to take ownership in why people don't understand money concepts and products well enough to make good, informed decisions. The first change we need to make is we need to make it easier for people to understand their money. Jargon has to die. And to do this, we have to significantly improve content and the language we use with clients to reflect how they work with other matters in their lives now. It doesn't mean making things short and quick, but it means we need to think how we communicate to make it more engaging, interesting, and varied for people. The jargon and language we use is massively off-putting, and I think it really increases mistrust. If we focus more on simplifying how we deliver and provide advice using more visual tools, less complex terminology, and consistent language, we would deliver much better advice and solutions to clients, which will help them make better decisions. And that applies to everyone in the industry. I promise you, I've apologized enough for rubbish fact sheets and illustrations, which is impossible to understand. It is not okay to give that to a client. If we think about it, if you've ever gone to a medical treatment or procedure, it's explained in layman's terms. The amount of paperwork we expect clients to digest is ridiculous. It makes it feel like we have something to hide, and it goes against transparency and trust that we're so desperate to create. We have to get more creative in how we bring money to life for people and actually make an effort to try and do this. So, to me, these are the barriers that are stopping us from innovating in how we deliver more affordable advice and help more clients. We need to create an industry that helps people want to take advice rather than feel like they have to take advice. If we can do this, I think we can truly become a valuable service to society that will make a meaningful difference in people's lives. I'm a massive idealist, but I really, really believe it's time that we throw a huge hand grenade at the current way and blow it up and start again. The way we work now is clearly not working for everyone. And what I want to see is new and fresh ideas to help the other 90% by encouraging different business models and ideas. We need to bridge the gap between full-fat advice, robots, and guidance. There's very little in between, and we need to colour that in. To achieve that, we need to have a radical rethink. I'm definitely up for it. My question is, are you?
Brilliant, thank you. Very, very good. And you definitely breathed, Helena, because you were like so easy to listen to. It was lovely. So I guess the challenge is, so Samantha and then Lisa, because we've had the challenge laid down, haven't we? Samantha, I think you're on mute. Oh, you're yeah.
I loved everything you said, really I did. And the only thing I would say is that the thing that you left out in terms of what stands between us and any sort of kind of trust and respect from clients is our bad reputation. I mean, we've got such a trashed reputation from history. And unfortunately, I do think...
Do you think you've got a trashed reputation with the younger audience, though?
I think PPI didn't do us any favours. It's quite recent, isn't it?
I think that's a good point, because the interesting thing that came out of, because I don't know if anyone listened to Boring Money Advice report this morning. It was fantastic. If you get a chance, catch up on it. I think the webinar is recorded. But most of the under 45s are not concerned by new brands. So yes, I agree with you. We have got a bad rep and we deserved it, to be fair. But we've got to go, I'm really, really sorry, hands up, we've screwed up. We really want to make this better. And I think we've got an opportunity to do that with youngsters, because they are keen for advice. They're far more keener for advice than we think.
Your suggestion that there's evidence that firms that we can trust, the regulator can trust firms, that you can hand over and trust firms to do the right thing, it just isn't there. It just isn't there. We will do it again. We will have another scandal.
I understand that view. I really do. I think when we look at the things we hear, when we hear about the British steel workers and things like that, I understand why we get really cynical. We've all picked up clients where they've been treated horrifically. There's no question about that. You know, I feel ashamed when I get those clients in front of me. I really do. But we have to have faith that most people are trying to do good. I did my master's degree on extrinsic and intrinsic rewards and financial advisors and fees. I interviewed 21 advisors. Do you know what's the one thing that came out of all of those interviews? Even though I spotted stuff that I thought, yeah, you're not really spotting that in yourself. All of them wanted to help clients. So You've got to have faith that if we all want to help clients, what is the real problem? To me, it's ignorance. We don't know what we don't know. Feel we jack of all trades, we don't accept our own limitations. And I think if we can set really good role model standards and say, this is an example of what really good looks like, not here's a rubbish rule, try and interpret it and figure it out for yourself. That's where we are. That doesn't work. But if we have this, then actually trusting advisors to do their best for clients, I actually feel it's something that can happen.
Do you think it's a little bit like any industry where there are always exceptional people or companies, and then there is also average, and then there's poor. So even take the legal profession, you know, one of the corporate lawyers I use, it won't matter where he goes, what company, I honestly won't care. I'll just follow where he goes because he's brilliant and I completely trust him. So while he's practicing, and it won't matter who he works for, I'll just follow him around because you could equally, from the same company that he's working from, I could have got someone that was maybe, I don't know, poor. And do you think that's an issue for all of the industries, and actually no different for financial services in the financial planning advice section?
I think naturally when you seek advice, you're looking for someone who knows more than you, which means you won't know when they're not doing a good job because they naturally know more than you. And that is always going to be an issue that we need to manage. We have to have a huge amount of self-awareness, and we have to have a huge amount of objectivity in what we do. And I think that's the same in every profession. But if you think about professions that are viewed as more intrinsically motivated, like doctors, nurses, teachers, when people describe them, they describe their good characters, don't they? You know, their willingness to teach people, the willingness to pass on what they know, the patience. You don't see financial advisors described in that way. If we can get to that point where people can see the intrinsic nature of a lot of financial advisors, the care, the attention, the wanting to help, because that actually shines through most advisors I know. And maybe I'm just putting myself in good company, but I do think we have a tendency to get quite cynical, particularly because the damage we can cause is huge. That's a fact. You know, we cause financial detriment when we do it wrong, and that ruins lives. So that actually comes with a huge risk, and I don't think we manage it very well. We have to highlight the people that are doing it best, and I think we need to focus on role models a lot more. But I do think that exists in every profession. We just highlight it because we're in a bubble.
Lisa, you're next, and then I've got Ruth and Ian.
Oh, I think I just was given a round of applause, but I do. Well done, because I know I hate public speaking. You did very well, and I do like the point about the regulation. I do think that is sort of stifling innovation a little bit, and I think we're in a culture where there is, you know, point the finger and blame, and as a result of that, and a lot of the stuff that's happened with the FCA, it's very much sort of after the event, you know. And actually, I think that is stopping people actually exploring other options. I think people are much more engaged. You know, with the rise of technology, you can make things much more sort of cost effective and get people engaged in the money a bit more. But because of this threat of regulation and some of the sort of restrictions around that isn't sort of enabling people to sort of branch out and offer it to sort of other people. There is, you know, a very ununderstandably with things that's happened, there's sort of a lot of concern that sort of drives that. So I think if there could be a bit more flexibility, then, you know, there is other opportunities to explore that could be really valuable, and particularly target the, you know, particularly if we keep saying the advice gap, those people that, you know, need to be served and have that opportunity to really be a bit more engaged.
I agree. It's actually interesting because a couple of the robo-advisors has moved from advice to guidance. And I think it's exactly why. They have to ask themselves the question, why are people not focusing on this area? Because they have a part to play. And for us to still have to cover stakeholder pensions in a letter, I mean, there's no wonder why suitability letters are 50 pages long. And actually, I think that anyone who writes a suitability letter 50 pages long should not be advising clients, in my view. That's ridiculous. You know, that's a massive cover your ass document. It's nothing else. And I don't think that's okay.
And that defeats the point, isn't it? Because actually you are covering yourself rather than actually getting to the grip of what it is I need. I want clear, simple guidance. And, you know, and I'll pay for that along with, but, you know, it's reaching that sort of gap, you know. And if I was presenting that to, you know, the younger generations just started saving, they're not going to read it, they're not going to take it on board, and they're not going to be engaged with it. So
absolutely not. It's horrible. We're supposed to write these for clients. That's why it's called a suitability letter, to what suits you. It takes it away entirely, and I think they have a responsibility in that.
Ruth.
Thank you. I'm not sure that Ian wasn't before me, actually. Is that okay? Thank you.
Well, that's because I'm a rubbish host. There you go.
Oh, no, not at all. Didn't mean it like that. Helena, it was brilliant. Thank you. And everything you said rang very true with me. I think, I mean, it is really interesting, isn't it? Because I feel that I'm a financial planner. I know we've got a varied audience, and I feel that I probably exist within an echo chamber of people doing good, like Helena. And so without doubt, there are some fantastic firms out there that do really, really amazing planning for their clients. I I missed Holly's presentation this morning. I'll definitely look that up. But it does concern me about the advice gap. It also concerns me about how do we expand on the good? How do we role model and profile the firms that are doing good work? And how do we get that seen? And I think there's two aspects of that. There's internal, so within our profession, within the industry, whichever is your preferred term, I know mine. And then it is to clients or potential clients and the public at large. To talk about the internal at first, I think there are some great movements out there, such as the PFS Power and the work that they're doing, such as Next Gen, who've got some fantastic things going on and really helping younger advisors and firms develop. But we sometimes don't help ourselves. I mean, Keith Richardson, the CEO of the PFS, wrote about this, and I did a supporting article about, how much damage we do to ourselves by squabbling on Twitter about stuff that actually isn't that important, like fees. We can all have a view on it, but it's not something to squabble about. We don't help ourselves. I think people seem to forget that the world is watching us beat each other up. So I think there's stacks that we can do ourselves, and I kind of wonder how we can drag ourselves up. Also then, I think about how the media portrays what we do, and of course there are some advocates in the media for us, but how can we get greater profile around good news stories and case studies? And rather than I'm sure, Helena, you've had it as well. You get an email from a journalist with 24 hours notice to try to spin something around and get it out the door when you're trying to do your day job. That's not helpful and it's not fair. So, how do we actually try to change the way it has been? And I think there's such a good message to get out there in all different shapes and forms. So I suppose what I'm saying is, I don't know what all the answers are either, but I definitely support your views, and I'm keen to know how we can all kind of come together to make this better. And sorry, final thing, compliance. I mean, goodness me, it's just such a mess, isn't it? And I sometimes wonder whether, and this isn't a derogatory comment to compliance officers, I don't mean it that way, but everybody's got into this habit of covering their backside. So, we at Paradigm Norton, we've, just simple things that we try to do. We've launched a podcast talking about money conversations and asking great questions. And when it's evident we're not offering advice, but the compliance hoops we need to get through in order just to have a conversation with people about money, it saps my soul sometimes. We possibly all need to be a bit bolder. And I don't think the good firms have got anything to fear from the FCA. That's the end of my rant.
I love the rant. Thank you. I do agree. One thing that sprung out at me from what you were saying is, I actually wonder if we're any good at telling people what we do, because most people still think advisors equals products. They're just going to sell me a product. They don't actually understand the nature of what we do. And I often find that's why, I don't know if the other financial planners find this, but clients are incredibly amazed after a first meeting, because they did not expect it. They didn't expect that. You completely throw them with an element of surprise, and they walk out actually feeling really like they've gotten some value out of it. And I think that's why most people who use advisors are really happy with them, because the level of detail we go in and what we do, but we seem to struggle to tell people this.
Do you think, Helena, just looking at the comment from Samantha in the chat, is it because it's difficult to, because we're not clear enough as an industry when it's not maybe a truly independent financial advisor or planner? I mean, is there an issue around that?
Yeah, I do think so, because for a lot of companies or a lot of firms, they will only earn when they do recommend a product. And I think the client keeps, I don't know, this is just I haven't tested this, but I do think people have that in the back of their minds when you see that. So if you have a separate planning fee, whether you then charge a percentage for implementing or whatever, that's probably a better way to separate and give it objectivity, to say, here's the plan, this is what we do, there's nothing attached to it, there's no product link. Whatever you do at that point is your choice. And I feel, to me personally at least, that feels like a better way of managing it, because people still think, oh, they've got to sell me something if you have that in the back of their mind. I just can't see how you can get away with that any other way. But I do think that's why people attach products to what we do. And until we can move away from that, I think we'll struggle.
Ian, you've been patiently waiting.
Yeah, I have. There's so much to say though after what everybody said. I just want to pick up on something Ruth said actually now. It's interesting. I think the way to improve our reputation in the industry is to get more people engaged with it and get a young audience. I don't think there's a particularly big lack of trust. I think there's probably a lack of people thinking that there's value for money. And as somebody that thought they could be smart and started a company 18 months ago thinking they could offer advice at a lower price point, until the point I picked up the phone to the first provider and it took 42 minutes to get the most basic of information, or I jumped through the hoops that Sense wanted me to jump through to do the most basic of reports, even though it was clear the client outcome was going to be good. I think that's going to be incredibly difficult. I don't think it's advisors that create the advice gap. I think it's everybody telling us what to do. So the compliance consultants, the FCA, and then the product providers not being able to supply us with information, still having antiquated systems. And I think that is where the focus, and I think the PFS should be driving it and driving change with those people and not with us. And once we don't have to spend 42 minutes on the phone to Aviva to get a basic piece of information, then you can start hitting us with a stick about, you know, driving our fees down. But right now, after 18 months, all I think is I was naive. I've never phoned a product provider up until 18 months ago. I had wonderful financial administrators and paraplanners to do it for me. And then when you walk a day in their shoes, you realize what a pain in the arse it is to do and how much time it takes. And until that changes, I don't know how we are going to be more competitive and appeal to more people. I really don't.
No, it's a good point you're raising, because you started off about talking about the value that maybe isn't perceived by the younger audience, and yet if you are spending hours trying to deal with incompetent, product providers, in terms of their methods and operations, you could argue that isn't value for money, right? I mean, none of us are going to sit here and go, yeah, that's great value for money, having me on the phone for 42 minutes to someone trying to get something that should just be accessible. But you're right. It's like a chicken and egg, isn't it? I mean, you need them to up their game. So in effect, you can provide value for money to the younger audience that hasn't got. Because you're right, that as you go to the high net worth individuals, which is traditionally where the servicing is, they're not as sensitive to the fees, because they just want someone to sort it out. They're like, do you know what? I don't mind paying. I'd rather pay you in to sit on that phone for 42 minutes, and I've got the money to do that. So I'm not that bothered. And yes, maybe it's not value for money, but I don't want to do it. So knock yourself out. But actually, if you go through to the advice gap, they don't have the money to pay you to sit on the phone for 42 minutes. That's where it all goes a bit pear-shaped, doesn't it?
And I think one of the issues with that comes down from the FCA. So the FCA, as we all know, anybody's compliance, they'll want to know why you're using Nucleus at 35 basis points over Aviva at 30 basis points. So we are putting price pressures on all of those product providers, and we're pushing them down and down and down. And invariably what happens is there's not enough people to answer the phones. There's not enough investment in technology and things. Yeah. And then it is self-perpetuating.
Yeah, it's a really interesting conundrum, isn't it? I obviously don't have the problem to solve it, and sorry, I don't know how we solve it. I don't know if anyone else has got any comments on that, that particular issue, because it's a vicious circle. Because actually, the less money they get, the less money they've got to invest to sort out some of the systems they've got. I mean, I guess being a little bit coming from the fintech background. I was on a panel the other day with Ron Khalifa. I don't know how many of you read the Khalifa report in terms of open finance and what's coming. So if you haven't, I suggest you read it. But it was a government initiative that Ron Khalifa was obviously he had to represent the government in terms of the report. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is he made the comment that the banks had spent over, £6 billion implementing open banking, and that they've not got any return on that. And I was sitting there, and at some point I said in the conversation, I'm like, well, how did they spend £6 billion on what they delivered? Because it's like, it doesn't seem possible. No fintech would have ever spent £6 billion delivering that. Do you mean that would, it's just, you know, it doesn't seem possible. So that's the other challenge you have, is that how do you get some of the, what I call these large, big companies more efficient in able to do what, to be honest, they're going to have to do to survive anyway. So why isn't more of that happening, you know, in their worlds, you know, like, you know, having 30, I think Lloyd's have got 13,000 IT staff. And yet, you know, what do we as consumers get for that? You know, what I'm getting at is where does it go? Where does that mismatch happen? I mean, why can't we get, you know, the stuff we need from them?
Yeah, I actually think advisors protect clients from providers because they don't know how bad it is. They really don't. We counted in the office one day as a joke, and I actually think it wasn't a joke in the end, to see how long we collectively were on hold. By 2 o'clock, well, we're not a big team, by the way, but we were 4 in, and by 2 o'clock, we already had 6 hours on hold between us. I mean, that's ridiculous. So all you can hear in an office, you don't hear a radio, you hear hold music. So
is that something that the financial, you know, to go back to the organisations, I mean, is that something that you could maybe create a dashboard of, like, I mean that's a staggering statistic. I mean, it will be right across the board, but I mean, back to Ian's point and your point about the on hold and the how long it takes. And I know there's been a bit of work done, especially in the pensions world, about transfers and how long that, you know, takes, and trying to actually get that down and make that. I mean, is that something that, you know, could be done to raise the profile with the FCA and the world at large?
I think Heather has done, you've done a lot on one of the service, and when I spoke to Lucian about this, he created some stories about provider stuff. I just don't think at the minute, the biggest providers that are seeming to be the culprits of this are legacy, and they're not really that bothered about changing, to be honest, because the harder they make it, the longer it takes for the assets to leave. That's how I feel it. And I know that's me being cynical, sorry, but I do wonder if that's part of the problem.
Ben, did you want to chip in?
Yeah, just a couple of things. Thank you, Helena, for your comments. I think one thing which really struck me was your point about jargon, or killing jargon, more importantly. Interestingly, I'm just doing some research for an event we're doing for advisors next month about the rise of the DIY investor and all of these younger advisors who are investing for the first time. And I was reading an article today, actually, about Robinhood. Now, I'm not putting Robinhood out there as an example of something which we should be encouraging people to do, but to give you a few, amazing stats in terms of how easy they make it. And I guess this is what advisors should consider they're up against. So their mission is to democratize finance for all. So you can open an account and be trading within 3 minutes. It's graphically very easy to access. They make it completely frictionless. It's almost gamified, which again comes with lots of bad things in terms of encouraging people, but I guess it just shows you how easy it can be made. And they've got 13 million users with a median age of 31, 50% of whom are first-time investors. So that's your point about ripping up the rulebook and just doing it from scratch. Like, there must be a way of doing that without ripping off the end client and without selling you their trades to high frequency traders. So I think that was one thing which really struck me. So I think we'll talk about that next month. And the other thing, to your point about, well, quite a few people made this point, I'm not an advisor, but I feel very strongly about this, is that this issue that there's no one fighting the fight for advisors and publicizing the good news stories. And I think one thing which those of you who are Octo members will have heard perhaps at the end of last year was the stuff that Lee and Alan Smith are doing about these financial planning stories, and filling a book with some of the best examples of what advisors do for their end clients. I thought it was such a great idea, and encouraged a lot of the advisors we work with to contribute to that book. I don't actually know where it's got to in terms of being published, but I thought what I really liked about that concept was not only can advisors use it to publicize it with their clients and prospective clients and professional connections, but also the fact is it was going to be a not-for-profit thing. So they were going to give copies of books to libraries so that actually people who knew nothing about financial advice as a potential career could actually learn about it. And that solves for Ruth's point about getting more younger people into the industry. So I think, we've sort of committed to buying X number of books. I hope it does get published, but I haven't seen where they've got to on that.
No, I think quite a few advisors contributed to that story, that's to the stories, and we all have them. We all have stories that how we help people. And what I found quite interesting about that is everyone was looking for that really special story, that really one in a lifetime one. But I think sometimes we have to remember even small changes make a huge difference to people, teaching them basic principles. You know, it doesn't have to be bells and whistles. Sometimes it's the really, look, I never really got that and now I do. And I think we underestimate that. But the point on jargon I can talk about forever, because I really hate it. Really, really hate it, because I just find it really sad that less than 24% of people read their pension statement. So we wonder why people don't get that, because it's just absolutely not engaging at all. It's horrid. You look at a pension statement and you just think, oh, just file it away. It doesn't say anything to you. And even, you know, I've got some of my clients that will start by, I'm really intelligent, but I don't get this. Why do they have to make an excuse to me? Because the paperwork they've been given is so rubbish. They don't need to explain and justify their intelligence to me. It's rubbish. I really don't get why we don't change it. It's such a really simple thing. So when I write my client reports, I put emojis in them. Don't sue me. I love it. I think it's brilliant to actually say to the clients in their own words, okay, you are having your party years now because you told me this is going to be your party years. And that goes in the report. My compliance consultant loves it. She says she feels like she's in my meetings. Great. No issues with that at all. So why, if some compliance companies can be flexible with it, are others saying to us, tick box, tick box, tick box? It's just really inconsistent. I don't think it works.
I think that's because that's how they make a living. The fear. If it wasn't for the fear, if we all had no fear from compliance or the FCA, we wouldn't be paying them fortunes to tell us what we're doing badly, and then they'd all have to reduce their fees and be much more competitive.
I mean, it's really interesting. You talk about ripping up the book, and all of you on this call, because I am not obviously a financial advisor, but I do wonder at sometimes, you know, with some of the things I've dealt with over in the past, is, you know, with some of the things, the technology benefit about being able to record meetings and things like that, you almost wonder if because when you're going to give what I would call compliant advice, as in you'll always give the advice you should give a customer, and you know that as an advisor you're trained, you genuinely know what you're doing, so you're going to give the advice you should give. I just think to myself, well, imagine if all you said was, I'm just going to record my meetings and that's it, and I'm never going to worry about it being a problem, because it will always be, when they go back and look at it, it's always going to be fine. And actually, you almost talk about ripping up the rule book and going back to the Robin Hood example, where there is there isn't a compliance officer in 3 minutes and getting you onto trade. So is it that actually the industry needs to be way braver in the way that it might go about something? Think, actually, I am not going to give a client poor advice. So therefore, I'm going to record everything. I'm going to say, look, I've got all my recordings. I keep them all. If there's ever an issue, we'll go back and listen to it. Because if the client's got an issue, let's listen to it. Let's have a look and see if I did anything wrong, knowing that you won't have done anything wrong because you give good advice. And you could argue, well, you don't need any of the stuff that we've kind of traditionally had in the past, because I think some of that has crept in. I don't know if anyone's ever been on the government site about myths. So I give a really simple example of when we moved into an office, and my office manager said to me, we have to have a pack testing. We have to have this contract with the electricians. I don't know, something like $3,000 a year. And they come around every year and put a sticker on all the electronic equipment, and that's pack tested. And if we don't do that, we're not insured. The office isn't insured. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, we have a kettle in this office and laptops. I'm like, why am I paying $3,000 to have some electrician come in every year and stick this sticker on it that says pack 102 date and time on laptops and a kettle? And I thought, in the kettle you could chuck out every month and get a new one. And it's like way less than $3,000, So I just couldn't get my head around it. And I said, no, that can't be right. And I'm not doing it. And I get a bit stubborn at times. And I give my 2 cents. I'm not doing it. I'm like, that is a complete waste of money. It's ridiculous. And I'm not doing it. And they're like, but we won't be insured. And they all had a major stress. And I said, you prove to me where I have to pay an electrician this contract amount to be packed as, you prove that is an actual thing. And they tried it and tried it. And eventually I went onto the government site, and it's a myth. You do not have to do that. And I showed it, and I said, it's a myth. Wait for it. It gets better than this. All you have to do, wait for it. All you have to do to comply with the law on this is once a year, someone, don't even have to be qualified, anyone does an eyeball test of all the cables and writes up that they are in a fit state to use. And if they're not, you chuck them out and buy another one. And you just record. So I could chuck the kettle out once a year if I want to be safe and buy a new kettle. And I check the cables on the laptops, and if they're not chewed and mice haven't eaten them and the whole bit and they appear to work, it's all good. That's it. So it's like, it's just like, this is what I mean about things, kind of what I call they build, don't they? They build and build and build until everyone thinks this is what you have to do. And it's like, actually, sometimes it's like, do you know, it's just rubbish.
I agree. I think FOS has got a lot to do with that, because it seems to be that compliance consultants cover everything after a FOS complaint. Oh, now you have to always put this in. Now you have to always put this in. And then you have to put this in. I just think it just seems to make it, just like you say, pile up, and it's not working. It's not relevant. And for me, one thing I found interesting, if you imagine if you give yourself 20 years ago an iPhone, imagine what you would have thought of that. So look how much the world has grown and changed in that time. How much has our industry actually changed in that time? I know we've changed a bit, but if you compare it, it's a bit not like this, which is what everything else has done, which I find quite worrying. We seem to be very sluggish.
I'm just reading the chat room. So Alan, you go next.
I would never go in front of Gillian, especially if she had her hand up first.
I'm getting
that's all right.
It's my forte tonight.
She's in charge. You go first.
Yeah, I've got to go in a few minutes anyway. I know this might be an unpopular view though, but we do end up with the regulator we deserve. I know that's an unpopular view. You know, if you think, you know, I'm a parent. I'm blessed with two wonderful kids. But if I had a child that, if my son continually fought with his sister, and so I told him off and grounded him, and then he broke the TV, so I told him off and grounded him, and then he gets home 2 hours late, and I tell him off and ground him. Then he gets drunk, and then he has a party when I'm on holiday, and then he crashes my car. There comes a point in time when you kind of have to discipline the child. And that's what we continually do as you know, I'm with Ruth, profession or industry, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. As a group, we continue to do it, whether it's you know, incorrect funds, or whether it's British Steel, or it's DB transfers, or it's endowments, or whatever it is, we continue to do it. So I think we have to look at ourselves first, and we have to sort our own stuff up before we start criticizing FOS, or we start criticizing compliance consultants, or whatever it is. And I am with Ruth. I don't think, you know, I spent the last 15 years advising people on how to deal with COBs. I think good firms have got nothing to worry about. Good firms who really act client first, who really understand TCF, who really understand transparency and value, haven't got anything to worry about whatsoever. But the sad thing is, there just ain't enough of them. And I'll give you a wonderful example before I need to shoot off, that I've just done some reprocessing of a suitability process and a KIP for a firm. And they're a chartered firm, and in the first 3 hours of dealing with them, I got 3 hours of me telling them how they're gold standard and how they're wonderful, and how they've never touched DBs, and everything they've got about their model portfolio service and platform DD is absolutely great. And when I started asking them what they did with wills and LPAs and protection, they didn't have an answer, which to me are the first three things that any financial planning firm talks to their clients about. So they were great understanding the difference between actives and passives, and what a efficient frontier was on their model portfolio service, and how to risk budget. And as I explained to them at the time, I think it was Mike Tyson that once said that everybody's got a plan until I smack them in the mouth. So how they were dealing with disability, how they were dealing with income protection, how they were dealing with all of the basics that these people want. No matter how good your cash flow plan is, no matter how good your tax planning is or anything, you get that right hook in the middle of the fight, what you need is some really good protection and a good LPA. And they hadn't put any of that in, but that's a chartered gold standard financial planning firm. And that's the problem. There just aren't enough good children. There's too many naughty children. So that's my bit over with. Sorry, Gillian. But
No, not at all. I mean, I guess what I was going to say is along similar lines, Alan. I think there are some absolutely amazing firms out there, and I think Helena mentioned the word stories, and there's just not enough positive stories out there. You know, I am sick of opening the Times at the weekend and just reading about the bad guys, and I don't think anybody is on the side of, if I could call it, the good guys. And the challenge that we have with the way that you know, FSCS and everything is set up is that the bad guy, the good guys lose all the way because they also pay for the bad guys, which just doesn't, you know, it just seems bizarre to me. But I think we, you know, it's interesting. There was a LinkedIn post, I think it was today, that I liked by an advisor that I know well, and he started with an apology. You know, he said, I'm really, you know, for talking about some good that he'd done for a client. And you're like, why are you apologizing? There is not enough people that are prepared to talk about the good that this industry does. And I always hark back, you know, as you know, I started many years ago as a graduate at Standard Life, and I didn't realize what the industry was about until I sat for weeks in claims department listening to phone calls from people who had lost loved ones, and to be able to say, you don't need to worry because your policy, there is a life policy that will pay out because a financial advisor sat in front of you and understood what your requirements were. And back to your point on protection, and I think sometimes we maybe lose sight of the goods that this industry does, and we don't talk enough about it. But just another point, because Helena, great presentation. You've got 4 points. We could do a session on each one of these, but and this is another point that's maybe related to yours on being a parent, Alan. I have young adult children, if I could call them that, and clearly it's back to this bit about where are we going wrong with the youth, and how can we make advice understand the benefit for them and affordable. But you know, I have a son who knows all about Bitcoin but couldn't tell me what an ISA is. Now I failed, right, as a parent, but I think we're doing something wrong as an industry and not engaging in the right way, where these kids can go on to whatever they're all looking at to ask me about, why have I not bought a Bitcoin, or should I, mum, invest in a Bitcoin, when actually we need to talk to them differently. So I mean, I don't have the answers, but clearly somebody's getting through to them somewhere, and we need to think a bit differently. So sorry, lots of jumbled thoughts there, but I just think we need to be better at telling people about the good that this industry does. That would be my parting shot.
Ian? You're on mute.
Sorry, I was waving bye to Alan.
Oh, sorry.
I'm happy to say something on that, Gillian, if you want. I've spent a lot of time over this last year speaking to youngsters to try and understand what matters to them. And I think we are really underestimating how much they are looking into this, because some of them are being incredibly sensible, but they just don't know where to go for good help. One girl I spoke to said, Google's just overwhelming me. I mean, she's intelligent. She can figure out, she research a lot of options. All they sometimes want is someone to say, this and this and this is the right direction for you, and this is how you do this, but in a simple way. We can't dumb it down, because it is really important. To me, it's incredibly essential that people understand their money. So it's not going to be fast and easy. That doesn't work. It's the same as when you go to try and get fit. You don't run a marathon from day one. You build up to it. You need to build your knowledge on money. And I think that's how we need to communicate this.
Can I just say, I think that's one of the things that concerns me most about the Vanguard offering. I think the Vanguard offering sits really nicely in a place, but then in their key features, it says, you know, if you need holistic financial planning, estate planning, wills, you know, income protection, like Alan just said, we're not going to give it. And I think it has the potential to water down already a weak brand for financial planners. We need to work on that and what we do. And now all of a sudden people think they can get proper financial planning all in for 79 bips, you know, and it just isn't. It's like calling McDonald's fine dining.
And the only thing I would just say about you know, there's a bit going on about Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency and the not the obsession is probably the wrong word, or the attractiveness, I think, to younger audience. The only thing I would say is that if you go back to Helena's point that you made in your presentation about listening to your customers and that advice gap, I would probably argue that if you want to really close the advice gap, I would probably challenge the financial planners as such, as an industry, to say that being able to have an informed and knowledgeable opinion about cryptocurrency, to the point whereas if I said to this group here, you know, how many are aware of Chia, which has hit the market recently, which is actually 4 times more efficient in terms of the electricity usage because of the way it's formed and the way the algorithms are kind of decoded. I imagine you're all going to look at me like you've got two, you know, I've got 2 heads. But I think, unfortunately, as an industry, if you want to reach that younger market, you're going to have to at least know what it is. I mean, you might advise them not to invest in it, you know, because it's not an investment. I mean, when people ask me, I say, well, if you want to bet on the next racehorse or buy, you know, crypto, I mean, knock yourself out, right? Because, you know, it's a, you know, who knows? But I guess what I'm saying is, as financial planners, if you've got youngsters coming to you, when you go, you know, I don't know anything about cryptocurrency. It's just what do you call it? It's something that no one should consider. I don't think that's going to help anyone. So I guess, you know, my challenge would be a little bit like, you know, is there a way for the Financial Planning Association to help financial planners know what, you know, about these things? You know, keep them up to date, provide that information to them, so you don't all have to individually keep up to date about, you know, the advancement in these different things, which, whether you like it or not, they're not going away. And the youth want to know, and I just think it's it shouldn't be this black market over here that people just put in a hole.
I also would just, if I can chip in there, Sam, maybe, I don't know if I count as a youth, but I'm 25, so maybe. But like, I don't really like associate with PPI or any of that stuff that was mentioned before. And I also don't think of IFAs. I mean, I work in like a fintech in pensions, but I'm not super engaged with or knowledgeable on the wealth management or the IFA space. And so I would say, like, I'm more of like a layman, but I don't think of IFAs as people having a bad reputation. Actually, I don't know whether I've missed that. I do remember people talking about like commission and the fact that they were channeling products that they were then getting money for, but I don't associate the sector with that. But I do think I associate the sector with being a bit boring. So like, if I wanted to go and learn about like, yeah, maybe like life insurance or that kind of thing, and if I wanted to do anything remotely interesting like ESG or impact investing or Bitcoin, then I would like open a Coinbase account or open Nutmeg or do it on my own. And I would never think to go like speak to my dad's financial advisor about that. So I don't know if yeah, maybe I guess just reiterating what Sam said from a youth's point of view. Not that I don't want to offend people by saying boring, but that is just my perception a bit. The boring, important stuff, I guess.
Georgia, I can probably piggyback off that. I'm 30, so I'm 5 years above you. And I think you're right. I was at a barbecue the other week. Now we can actually meet in small groups. And somebody, because I work in financial services, all of my husband's friends just think I just know everything. And they said to me, oh, Abby, should I buy Bitcoin? How much should I put in? When should I put in? And I said to them, what do you put into your ISA? And they all looked at me like I was the most boring person. And I think it was just because it was the most basic question. I was like, well, what contributions do you put into your ISA? And they're all like, oh. And it's almost like bringing it back a notch or two. You can do all the fun stuff, but you need to get around the basics as well. And yeah, so I just completely agree with you. It's almost like try to make the ISA stuff fun and the protection and everything that's required, as well as putting in the interesting bits and the more exciting stuff. But yeah, Helena, that was a really, really good presentation. I think I could talk about it and listen to you all for ages on it.
And on that note, we are at 7:02 and I think we could sit here all night. I mean, genuinely, we have we've set the ball running, and I think, Helena, we could talk about each of those topics. But I feel, I don't know about what you all feel, but genuinely we've had a really, really creative discussion tonight about, maybe some thoughts that we'll all go away with, and you never know, they bubble around, don't they, and they might pop out and do some good, which the industry certainly could do with and needs. But I do from a non-financial advisor perspective, I do applaud all of you that are financial advisors and financial planners, because I guess the fact that you care so much and want to make a difference, that advice gap is telling, isn't it, of an industry? It is telling. But anyway, so I applaud you. I know you don't get much applause, but I do applaud you, and thank you very much, Helena. I mean, it was very good. I mean, I think you can tell from all that's happened, you did a brilliant job, and we didn't see any nerves, so you don't need to worry. You need to crack on. And I don't know if anyone else has got any last minute things I want to say, but I think I've already said June 9th. We have a mystery speaker, don't we, Gillian? Because I think, if I'm really honest and transparent, we haven't found one yet. So let's just,
You are hopeless.
I always tell it how it is, right? It's fine.
There are some bubbling along in pipeline. Yeah. I just wanted to say thanks at the end to those young people. So as an old person, it's just great, because it's back to what Helena said. It's about putting the customer at the heart of what we all do. And, thank you for taking part and giving us your views, because I always love that.
Yeah, thanks. Brilliant.
And Ben, did you want to say something? I think you want to just chip in.
Yeah, so very kind. Heather, I was talking to Heather about something a while ago, and she asked me along tonight just to flag it quickly. I guess mainly for aimed at advisors, but open to everyone. We're doing an event next week, a week tomorrow, on the 20th, which is loosely titled Women in Advice. And I'm obviously conscious I'm neither a woman nor an advisor, but I will be hosting it. And we've got about 35, 40 people signed up so far. And I think the two sort of purposes to it. One is basically to try and focus on the positives, i.e. not why aren't there more women advisors, but more why do women make great advisors, why is it a great career for women, etc. And then as part of that, we're going to have 4 of the advisors who would partner with us actually just doing a quick sort of 5-minute talk through their career, and then being open to questions, so that advisors who have less experience can just see firsthand. And we've got examples of people who, women who've been directors in large companies and big business writers. We've got women who've actually set up their own company in the last year. We've got women who set up their company like 10 years ago. So there's a sort of variety of experiences there. But I think mainly aimed at not so much about them being women, just about being successful advisors. But I think if anyone's interested to join, particularly advisors, just please send me a message on LinkedIn or what have you, and I'll drop you the details. It's like I think an hour and a half webinar next Thursday the 20th.
Oh, that's brilliant. I mean, it's great to see more women being celebrated as well, because that's another area we struggle with, don't we? Is that there's not a quite small cohort women in financial services, full stop. Right, well, on that note, enjoy the rest of your evening, and see you in a month's time.